Hello everybody, welcome along to this video. Mr. Johnson teaches Act 2 Scene 1 of Macbeth, part of my series revising every key scene and trying to summarise it down for you. You'll find Macbeth as part of your GCSE English Literature, and that's paper 1 section A that we're talking about here. So let's move on then and have a look inside. So to summarise the scene into a few bullet points, after the banquet celebrating the victory against the Norwegians, which happened in Act 1, there's been a big banquet, a big celebration. Following that banquet, Banquo and Fleance are walking in the castle at night. They come across Macbeth, they have a brief conversation about how happy the king is with Macbeth, and when they leave, Macbeth hallucinates a dagger before he then leaves to murder the king. So a really pivotal scene, this one. It involves a soliloquy from Macbeth, which is of course where he stands on the stage talking his thoughts to us, the audience. There's no one else there at the time. Key characters in this scene then, well, Macbeth features, and so does Banquo and Fleance, as I've talked about. A reminder that Fleance is Banquo's son. He never ever says how old he is. We presume he's young-ish, maybe sort of 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe thereabouts. And here we go. Act 2, Scene 1. So this is Inverness, which is Macbeth's castle. And in come Banquo and Fleance bearing a torch, as in a flaming torch, rather than an electric battery torch. Banquo asks, how goes the night, boy? Fleance says, the moon is down, I've not heard the clock. So they're wondering what time it is, it's hard to tell. And Banquo says, that big chunk there, hold, take my sword. He says, there's husbandry in heaven, their candles are all out. And I've highlighted that in yellow, just because it sort of highlights some dark imagery. It says it's a recurring theme, dark imagery in the play, but also stars keep coming up as an image, or the lack of stars. There are no stars in heaven, in the sky that night, and therefore that is suggesting that something is wrong. When he says there's husbandry, he means things are unsettled, things aren't quite right. So it's sort of a bit of foreshadowing, which the audience is very much aware of. In some ways you could call it dramatic irony, because we know what's going to happen. The king's going to be murdered, which is why things are all unsettled. He then goes on to talk about not been able to sleep and wanting to be able to sleep and escape from the dreams that he's having, the dreams which are keeping him from settling at night. In then comes Macbeth. Banquo says, give him my sword. Who's there? Because they don't know who it is. Calm down, it's a friend, it's a friend. Basically says to Macbeth, you're not at bed yet, not gone to sleep? And then he talks about the king, which I put an arrow there. The king has been unusually happy. He gives you wife this diamond. You're such a good hosts. And then further down on line 20 and 21 I should say, Banquo says, I dreamt last night of the 3 weird sisters. To you they have showed some truth. Meaning to Macbeth, what they said to him about becoming Thane of Cawdor has come correct, and Banquo's pointing this out. And then Macbeth tells an enormous lie. He says, I think not of them. Which we just know isn't true, because ever since he's met the witches, he's thought about nothing other than what they've said. But there's a sort of a link to the theme of deception. He's now starting to lie to his best friend and hide the truth from him as well. And then he goes on to say that Banquo would like to have a chat with you about them at some further time. Off go Banquo and Fleance. Macbeth is talking to this servant when he says, basically, ring the bell when my drink is ready. Off goes the servant, and then he's left alone on stage, and this is where the soliloquy comes in. It is one of the really key moments in the play. Could well come up as part of the exam question, or if it doesn't, you certainly would want to talk about it, because this is where he reveals his true thoughts to us. I've highlighted that bit in pink, because I think that would be a really good bit to use as a quote at some point in an answer. So he says, is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. So as I've put the arrow there on line 35, he visualises this dagger in the air, handle pointing towards him. Some stage productions have it that there's sort of a floating dagger or a shadow of a dagger. Sometimes there's nothing, almost suggesting that it really truly is in his mind. Either way, Macbeth goes on to say, I have thee not yet, I see thee still. So I can't touch you yet, you're still there. And he goes, can't you not be touched as well as seen? When he says, are you not sensible to feeling as to sight? Can I not feel you as well as see you? And then he goes on to say, are you a dagger of the mind, a false creation coming from the heat-oppressed brain? Like, are you coming from my fevered brain, which is like running hot with all these thoughts I have? He compares, he says, I can see you in form as this one which I now draw. He pulls out his own dagger, a real dagger. I can see you just as really as I can see this dagger I have in my hand. This big chunk here, the top bit, thou marshalest me the way I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. To marshal as in to direct it. He believes the dagger is pointing the way to the king's chamber. And he calls it an instrument. I haven't highlighted that as a euphemism, but I think that's quite an interesting word. The fact that this dagger he's going to murder somebody with is an instrument to him. So interesting word choice there. He goes on to further say, with my next arrow down, he starts visualizing this blood on the dagger. He talks about on thy blade, the blade of the knife, and dudgeon, which is like the handle part, gouts of blood, which was not so before. He then refers to in yellow there, it is the bloody business. A real euphemism again. He's calling it business. So he's still almost trying to convince himself that what he's doing isn't wrong. It's something he has to do. The next big chunk, sort of line 50 downwards there on the screen, really are lots of references by Macbeth to darkness and supernatural, talking about how the world is unsettled and things aren't feeling quite right. He talks about pale Hecate or Hecate, she's the goddess of witchcraft. You've got references to wolves in there and witches. He makes a reference to Tarquin, who's a really evil Roman prince, and makes a reference to ghosts. Really is sort of talking about darkness and supernatural, whether he's sort of trying to conjure those things up to help him on his way, or whether he just sees those as sort of things like he is doing. They are evil, he is about to do evil. We don't know, but that's interesting references that he makes there, and that's quite a big chunk of it as well. And then finally, the end of his soliloquy here. So basically, the first arrow says he's saying, while I keep talking, he remains alive. So I need to actually sort of get on with it. Then a bell rings, which is Lady Macbeth sending a signal that it is time to go. He says, I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Once again, as I've put there, it makes him seem like he's being made to murder the king, that other things are leading him there, that he doesn't have an active choice, which he does, of course, but he almost is trying to find excuses for what he's doing. And then he says, finally, as a rhyming couplet, hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. Which once again echoes the witches. We've got lots of these occasions where Macbeth uses rhyme, almost mirroring, echoing those witches' predictions at the start of the play. We're also left with this tension because the murder happens off stage. As an audience watching this for the first time though, they wouldn't know what happens next. They would be really curious. Does he go through with it? Does he give up on it? Does he succeed? Does he get caught? They don't know. So it's a moment of tension. Key themes then. So we've got violence, of course, the idea of the dagger being a symbol of that. I always talk to my classes about a dagger being a very different sort of weapon to earlier on in the play. When Macbeth kills at the start of the play in battle, he's using a sword, which there's no hiding. But a dagger is really very much a sort of a secretive weapon, and it's very different to what he's done before. So he's actually a changed man. Deception as well, sort of looking like one thing being another, but also the supernatural comes up in this as well. And actually one which isn't on the screen there, which I would add now, would be blood. The theme of blood, which I mentioned in my next video on the next scene, really starts in this as well, when he talks about thy blade, there are gouts of blood. Quick revision questions, worth pausing the video and having a look at these yourselves. They sort of will ask you to go back through and retrieve some of the things I've said to you and just check your understanding of it. So a really good way of actually making sure that you've understood this video and understood this scene. A bigger question that you can consider as well, how does Shakespeare explore the darkness of the mind in this scene? There's lots of references to what's going on in Macbeth's brain. How does he do it? And I've got some bullet points there for you to consider which would help you in response to that answer. And finally, just wanted to talk about darkness and sleep here as well. So darkness has been a real theme here. We've got this idea of husbandry in heaven, as Banquo said, and things not being right, and evil things taking place at night. But Macbeth later on in his soliloquy also made lots of references to the dark things that happen at night and said now over one half world, like literally half the world is asleep while the other half is awake, of course. Pale Hecate celebrates, and there's the lack of sleep as well, which is going to go on to become a real theme running through this play. Sleep is so important for us as human beings to help us, and then to commit such a thing at night, almost when you should be sleeping, is like a violation. It goes against natural ideas of sleep. So there you go, I'm going to stop the video there. I hope it's been useful to you. Very much a key scene which you definitely want to know for your exam, so well done, because you've watched this video to the end and you've got that. So check out some of my other videos, of course, which go through some of those key scenes, and I wish you every success when it comes to your turn to write about Macbeth. Thank you. Bye bye.